Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. There's been a ton written in recent weeks about the US dollar and the potential loss of the reserve currency status. Rumors of the BRICS nations, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, forming their own cryptocurrency between their trading bloc has been making news headlines. I've actually held off in publishing a podcast on this topic. Merely repeating what you can read in the Wall Street Journal or on Bloomberg would not be adding any value. I would need to provide an angle that would bring something new to the dialogue. So, hopefully that's the case. Here we go. If the US dollar were to lose confidence on a global basis, there's no question it would be devastating to the US economy. The result would be a drop in demand for US Treasuries. But since the US government is the largest debtor of all, they'll need to find buyers for those treasuries. In order to attract buyers, they'll need to raise interest rates relative to other offerings in the market. That would definitely be deflationary, and that would suppress economic output. For the last 3 decades of globalization, the U.S. has exported its inflation. The manufacturer who sells their Christmas ornaments to Walmart collects U.S. dollars from Walmart and then takes those dollars to the bank, perhaps in China, to exchange into yuan. The bank then turns those dollars into the Chinese central bank, who have an excess of dollars, and rather than sit on those dollars, the Chinese central bank use those dollars to purchase other commodities like oil when they need to fuel the economy, or they use the dollars to buy US Treasuries. In so doing, the US successfully exported its inflation. But China stopped buying US Treasuries, so if we don't have foreign buyers of US Treasuries, the question is, who is going to buy those Treasuries? Well, for the moment, there's a lot of domestic buyers for US Treasuries. But the recognition of the dollar as the global standard goes beyond central banks. For those who live in countries that are experiencing higher inflation than the U.S., and there's quite a few, there's a real dilemma on what to use as a temporary store of value that's easily tradable. I'm thinking about countries like Turkey, Argentina, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and many, many others. For example, many people who live in Turkey are increasingly changing their leftover Turkish lira at the end of the week into U.S. dollars. Some will buy gold and some will buy euros, but the vast majority are changing their lira into US dollars. They can often even trade in US dollars. If you go to virtually any country as a tourist, you can give the average shopkeeper US dollars, but not necessarily euros, not Canadian dollars, and not Japanese yen. The average person on the street is willing to accept US dollars. Now, has the US damaged its position as the global reserve currency? Yes, absolutely. The imposition of sanctions against Russia has given many countries pause. They noted the U.S. would freeze their assets if the U.S. wasn't happy with them. That flies in the face of the idea that the dollar is universally accepted. You can't be universally accepted as the global reserve currency and then punish those you don't agree with from using the dollar when they don't conform to your code of conduct. There are several factors that would prevent a nation from abandoning the U.S. dollar. The biggest is the amount of debt in the world that's denominated in U.S. dollars. Let's look at the liability side of the equation. If we estimate that there's more than $100 trillion of debt denominated in US dollars, even if people decide they want to start trading for oil in yuan or rupees, that debt still exists in dollars. The number of assets in the euro-dollar system would not change just because you could not retire the US dollar denominated debt overnight. It would literally take decades to retire all of that debt. You would still require the debt repayment to be denominated in US dollars. Now, if you don't hold dollars, you don't have a path to repaying the loan. Now, maybe you might find another way to bring another form of debt, maybe from another lender, then theoretically, you could possibly eliminate the US dollar. Now, if all of those entities in the euro-dollar system decide to retire the US dollar denominated debt all at once by paying it back overnight and they get new loans, denominated in yuan or rupees or rubles, to replace that dollar of debt, those loans would disappear and those dollars that form the loan principal would disappear. Remember, the earnings on the loan is the interest, and that's what the lender gets to keep as profit, that is, if the lender's a bank. The loan principal is not the bank's money, and if those dollars were loaned into existence, as they often are, they disappear from the balance sheet when the loan gets repaid. So those dollars disappear, and at that moment, the demand for dollars would shrink, and so would the supply of dollars. The system would be roughly in balance. But the future is very unlikely to play out that way. In the meantime, those who need to purchase commodities still have a need for dollars. And we've seen often there's a shortage of dollars globally. That means the buyer of copper, oil, uranium will still need to price that commodity in US dollars, if not transact in dollars. And the shortage of dollars globally has in fact been one of the drivers for transacting in something other than dollars. Now, will the dollar eventually lose its dominance? I believe the answer is yes. Just like the British pound was once the reserve currency, and before that it was the Dutch guilder. Go back far enough and you would find the Roman denarius. For a period of time, each of these currencies had achieved a dominance that was so strong it was hard to imagine a world where that dominance would be broken. The decline in demand for the dollar will be gradual, and it will take decades at least. There will not be a single event that will push the dollar off its world reserve currency status. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.